Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. I have the pleasure to introduce again to you, but to this first press conference, the President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Abdulla Shahid. Mr. Abdulla Shahid, Mr. President, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Monica. Monica likes to make sure that we start things on time, so she began at 10:59, so that I could start my introductory remarks sharp at 11 o'clock. A very good morning to you all. It's wonderful to see you again here in the press briefing room and those who are joining us virtually. Welcome to our first press conference and to this conversation after the high-level week. I very much enjoyed the press stakeout after I took office. And as I mentioned to you, I intend to keep our exchanges going during this 76th session. On Monday, I gavelled the end of the general debate, the first with a substantial in-person element since the start of the pandemic. And it was not only you who were anxious to see the week through, I also was very anxious to have a successful week through. We can surely say that it was a successful and productive high-level week, when international leaders discussed pressing issues, especially climate change, the recovery of COVID-19, the need for a quick and sustainable recovery for global economy, and the way forward based on multilateralism and cooperation. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you first for your rich coverage of events of the general debate, which helped to keep the world informed of the first hybrid session since the pandemic began. I also would like to express my sincere gratitude to the United States, our host government, the City of New York, and the Mayor's Office for all the logistical and security support extended to the delegations. I would also like to thank the entire UN Secretariat, particularly the DG-SCM, the Department of Operational Support, the Protocol, Security and Facilities Management for their relentless support, and of course, my own team members. During the high-level week, we heard from 194 speakers, including 100 heads of state, 52 heads of government, 3 vice presidents, and 34 ministers. I myself held discussions with close to 70 heads of delegations of all levels. In this regard, I would like to commend the initiative of the New York City government for providing mobile vaccine vans to visiting delegations. I understand that about 93 attendees were vaccinated and 843 attendees availed of the free testing facilities offered through the mobile vaccine vans. Another issue that was spoken at length and which was sadly on display was the deeply poor gender representation at the highest level of work. Only 18 of the 194 speakers this year were women. That is about 9.2%. As the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic continue, it is becoming increasingly clear that if we want to build back better, a stronger gender lens on response and recovery is vital. I'm pleased to announce that during my presidency, I will be reconstituting the President of the General Assembly's advisory group on gender equality, and I wish to form it as the advisory board on gender equality. If we don't take the necessary steps to turn this tide, we will need 135.6 years, according to recent studies, to close the gender gap. We have to be faster than that. You are already aware that during the high-level week, I had dedicated discussions with women heads of state and government, as well as the European Union, on how to boost gender equality. Prior to taking oath of office, I had also met with female permanent representatives to the United Nations. The Board on Gender Equality will bring together extensive mix of expertise from member states, the UN system, the private sector, United Nations treaty bodies, CSOs, and parliamentary sector. In doing so, I hope to ensure that there is truly an inclusive perspective to bring a multifaceted approach to advancing gender equality throughout the work of the 76th session. This board will serve as a mechanism to help mainstreaming of a gender perspective through all my initiatives and mandates for this session. I'm now finalizing the composition and will be announcing it very soon. Among my other initiatives include to continue the practice of holding informal consultations with permanent representatives, as was done during previous sessions as well. This is also in line with the General Assembly resolution on revitalization. These dialogues will be convened under the banner of Holwashi Dialogue. In the Maldives, a Holwashi is a meeting place for the whole island. It is a place for discussion, ideas, and interaction about issues that are prevalent in the community. I want to bring the spirit of Holwashi to the United Nations General Assembly and create a space for dialogue, exchange of views, and discussions on finding solutions. In the main part of the session, we plan to hold 5 Holwashi sessions. The first is on the interlinkages between climate change and humanitarian situations. This links with a series of events we are planning in the month of October around the theme of climate change in the lead up to COP26. As you are aware, I'm holding an event entitled Delivering Climate Action for People, for Planet, and for Prosperity on 26th of October. It is going to be in hybrid format. This event will be focused on the gap between current and required technical and financial capacities to achieve the 1.5 degrees target. We will also aim to show how the gap can be met through showcasing best practices that simultaneously address climate action and the myriad structural challenges exacerbated by the pandemic. More details on the program of the event will be released in due course. But we expect to hear from multiple stakeholders, including governments, businesses, civil society organizations, international organizations, youth, and women. The event will be an additional opportunity for member states, private sector, civil society, and other stakeholders to come together, take stock of the ambition-raising initiatives along the path to COP26, and identify areas where more can be done. As announced earlier, I have decided to retain the board of advisors to the President of the General Assembly on LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS, which was first established during the 75th session of the General Assembly. I will use the board to gather advice on messaging and key priorities for these groups of countries, as well as enhance political will to bring the perspectives of these countries to the work that my office does. The board will also be useful in galvanizing global efforts to address the most pressing challenges for these countries. I'm now finalizing the composition and will be announcing it soon. Dear friends, multilateralism is the only way to address common challenges, and one of them, COVID-19, is not over yet. In fact, it will not be over until we achieve universal vaccination. In January next year, I plan to convene a high-level meeting to take stock of the vaccine situation. I personally believe we have the capacity to immunize the entire world. Humanity saw a tremendous amount of ingenuity and solidarity with the vaccines in record time. What we need to do now is to act collectively to ensure that all who need it will receive the vaccine. We cannot simply accept that less than 3% of people in Africa have received a shot, when in other parts of the world they have started to take a booster dose. I will continue to discuss these issues also during my exchanges and official travels. Tonight, dear friends, I will fly to the United Arab Emirates to visit the Dubai Expo 2020. On 6th October, I will go to the Maldives for an official visit and will end the travels in Belgrade for the conference on the 60th anniversary of the first conference of the non-aligned movement. I will be back in office on 13th October. But the good news is, for the time being, I'm here. And I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The first question goes to Valeria Robeco from Banca. Valeria.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you so much, Mr. President, for this press conference. Valeria Robeco from ANSA Newswire, and I thank you on behalf of the UN Correspondent Association for being here with us. My question is on the high-level week. So, do you think has been made progress on the most important dossier that you discussed during ANGA? Are you satisfied with the mitigation measure against COVID that were in place here at the UN? And what's next? So what are your next priorities for the weeks and months ahead? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Valerie. I'm very satisfied with the high-level week. In my opening remarks, I mentioned to the heads of state and heads of government that I feel that this is the time for us as leaders to bring in hope to our people. That our people have gone through so much pain and devastation and destruction, death. We need to tell our people collectively that we can deliver a better tomorrow. That there is hope, that humanity has enough goodness to come together. During the general debate, I noted that time and time again, the heads of states, heads of government, and ministers, they highlighted the goodness of humanity. And it brought a lot of optimism that we can do it. I'm very happy about it. The mitigation measures that were taken, that were in place. Of course, we went through the honor system. I'm so relieved, I'm so happy that we were able to get through the high-level week without much incident. The Secretariat, the health officials here, they were all well prepared for emergencies and protocols were in place. And the success of the high-level week resulted in the fact that we are going into the committee stage of the General Assembly with more opportunities for in-person meetings. We would continue the 1+3 formula at the General Assembly Hall and the 1+1 formula for the committee rooms, which I have already announced. And I think this is actually a very, very positive message that the United Nations have been able to bring to the attention of the international community, that vaccines work, that with vaccination you can actually beat this virus. And I think that is the message. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. So I have your names here written down, so I'll call you as you give me the signal. James Bass, Al Jazeera. Go ahead. James.
Mr. President, thank you for doing this. I have a substantive question in a moment, but first, and I'm not making any allegations of wrongdoing, but when you look at your website, under ethics and transparency, and all of us in this room remember the affair of John Ash, there is absolutely nothing under ethics and transparency, and there were commitments given that it was going to be transparent in the future and all the funding of the GA, and the page is blank, ethics and transparency. Could you explain that, why it doesn't seem very transparent to have nothing under ethics and transparency on your website? And my substantive question is about COP coming up. We are exactly 1 month to the day. Given all the commitments that you've seen around the world, are we anywhere near there yet, or are you worried, particularly as you come from a country I know that is potentially going to suffer very badly from climate change?
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James. My office is fully committed to transparency. I've declared my assets, whatever I have. The website is being updated. We have a team that is in place, 40 different nationalities, 30 different nationalities, 40 staff. We have, you would know that the PGA office is not staffed by permanent staff. Once the president gets elected, the member states provide the staff. We are in the process of getting everything organized, and I can promise you that we will get it done very soon. Just bear with us. I will make sure that our team gets everything on the website. It is just that we have just finished the high-level week. We were overwhelmed. We are working with the Secretariat and everyone. So it's not intentional. It's just that we have been overwhelmed. On COP26, James, you are right. I come from the Maldives, the small island states who are right at the front of this issue of climate change. For us, it's an existential issue. For us, there is not enough being done because we don't have high ground. We don't have anywhere to go. So for a Maldivian presidency, we will continue to highlight the fact that there is the possibility that more can be done. And it's not only the Maldives, it's the entire small countries, all of us coming together. This should have been done not at COP26, it should have been done COP25, COP24. Every time we go there, James, we go with a lot of expectation. Because for us, we can see the sea coming in, taking our land away. Yes, the expectations on COP26 is enormous, enormous. And I would not want our leaders to go back once again, disappointing our people. I would urge all the leaders to believe that we can do it. As I said in my opening remarks, James, I said that we have the scientific, technological know-how. We have the resources. What we are lacking is the courage to come out, do it. And I would urge that.
Thank you. I will go to Lenka Whites and afterwards Gregory Tass. I have you, Ibsen. Go ahead.
Thank you for this briefing. My question is on the Credentials Committee. Could you please confirm the date when the committee will meet, and are you in contact with its members on the issues of Myanmar and Afghanistan? Thank you.
Thank you, Lenka. Yes, I am in touch with the committee. Sweden is the chair of the committee. I have communicated the correspondences to the committee chair. Usually the committee meets in November, brings the report to the General Assembly in December for adoption, and I am sure that Sweden will keep to the schedule, the traditional schedule. Thank you.
Okay, Gregory Tass, go ahead.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Mr. President, given your ambitious goal to responding on vaccine inequality, and how can you work with P5 member states to mitigate vaccine inequality, vaccine distribution in the whole world, and about recognizing the vaccines in different countries? Thank you.
The General Assembly is the 193 countries. It's the most universal body of the UN. And I intend to bring the 193 countries, all of them together. The messages that I have received so far, when I have been listening to the general debate, has been most positive from the United States, from China, from India, from many, many other corners of the world, from the vaccine producers themselves. And I intend to utilize the convening power of the President of the General Assembly to bring all of them together in January. And my desire is to make sure that we all come out of the January meeting with a much more optimistic timeline, whereby we will be able to vaccinate the entire world by end of 2022.
Ibsen, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Ibtisam Azim from the Daily Arabic Al-Arab Al-Jadid. So I have first a follow-up on the Credential Committee for Afghanistan, like for all countries, including Afghanistan and Myanmar. Just to understand, does the committee have to get to an agreement, like all 9 members has to agree on that, on their report, or is it like, and then if they don't have a decision, is it the General Assembly that votes on that or not? Just to understand the issue there. And then my question is on the vaccine and intellectual property waiver, if you think that would be helpful. There were some pledges, including by the US, regarding donating more vaccine to countries. But if you put all this together, it's still not enough, actually, for what we need in the world to vaccinate the majority, or 70% of the people by, I think, June is the goal, if I'm not mistaken. So if you have a comment, if you could comment on that, thank you.
Thank you, Ibsam. On the Credentials Committee. The Credentials Committee will consider the matters on its agenda, and they will submit the report, as other committees does, to the General Assembly. Of course, the General Assembly, as the universal body, makes a decision. So it will be the 193 countries who will decide. The committee will review, and the committee will submit their findings, and the membership, the entire 193 countries will have the opportunity to decide. And this has been the past practice. It has been done many, many times. On the vaccine, when the vaccine came out, or when we were on the way to the vaccine, we heard many, many leaders talk about making the vaccine a common good of the humanity, and that everyone will have access to vaccine. I think we have to keep on reminding our leaders, well, now the vaccine is here, so let us make sure that everyone gets it. Of course, the vaccine production needs to be increased, and there are countries who can increase it. There are countries who we should provide the technical know-how in different parts of the world, which could lead to more access to vaccines. So these are the type of things that I hope we will be able to come out in the January meeting that I'm hoping to convene.
Thank you. I go to Hamid and Mario afterwards. I have you, George. Thanks.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Abdulla Hamid Sayam from the Arabic Daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. My first question, and I have a subsequent question related to it, is about the agenda of the GA. Don't you see that the Security Council had been encompassing and taking more items that normally, historically speaking, been dealt with at the General Assembly, like the roots of conflict, like children, like discrimination, like women issues. These traditionally used to be discussed in the GA, not anymore. That is one thing. And second, what is your intake, or what's your opinion about Resolution 377 of 1950, which is called United for Peace Resolution? Is it still valid? It has been an important resolution during the conflict in Suez Canal and other issues, and spilling out that the separation wall in Palestine is illegal under this resolution. But lately, no one wants to talk about this validity of this resolution. Do you believe it's still valid and should be utilized every time the Security Council is paralyzed and doing nothing on an issue such as the question of Palestine? Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul Hamid. During my opening remarks at the General Assembly, I referred to exactly what you have highlighted, that within the United Nations, different organs of the United Nations, we should not be competing against each other. We should be united to make sure that we address the current issues at hand. Because for the person out there, for our constituents at home, for them, the Security Council, the ECOSOC, the General Assembly, these details they don't know. What they know is the United Nations, the UN. So we have to make sure that we don't internally compete against each other on each of the organs in getting to who gets what. There is no infight. We have to make sure that we deliver to the people. On resolution, the Uniting for Peace, I'm very happy that you brought it up, because this was a question time and again asked from me during the interactive dialogue as well. Well, the Uniting for Peace resolution is a resolution, you would know, that has been referred to and utilized by the General Assembly not once, 5 times. 5 times the United Nations General Assembly has convened under the Uniting for Peace resolution. So there is precedence of what can be done under the Uniting for Peace resolution. And the resolution is very clear that if the United Nations Security Council consistently fails to address to issues of maintenance of international peace and security, which is mandated in the Charter for the Security Council, the General Assembly has the power to convene under this resolution, and it has done so.
We go to Mario Vilar, EFE. Mario, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mario Villar with the Spanish Newswire, EFE. Just 2 follow-ups. One on the mitigation measures during ANGA. We are aware of some cases that were publicly disclosed by the delegations, the Brazilian delegation, for instance. Do you know how many cases of COVID were notified to the UN during last week? And then a second follow-up on Afghanistan and Myanmar. Do you see any sort of consensus emerging in your discussions with the member states on how to proceed with these 2 cases?
On the, Mario, thank you. You referred, the 2 questions were about cases, right? One is about COVID cases, the other one about Afghanistan and Myanmar cases. So on the COVID cases, the protocol, the procedures set out here at the UN is that individual countries communicate these findings to the Secretariat. And the Secretariat informs the OPGA, Office of the President of the General Assembly. So far, I have been informed of 1 case. No other communications have been received by my office on any cases that may have been, or that, meaning only 1 case has been referred to the OPGA. On Afghanistan and Myanmar, Mario, do you mean about the credentials or more broader? The credentials. The process that works at my office is that when we receive these conflicting credentials, communications, we refer it to the committee. And committee chair is Sweden. So Sweden will do the consultations, the chair will do the consultations, and they convene the committee, usually in November. And then a report is expected to be submitted to the General Assembly in December. So I'm waiting for the chair to convene the meeting.
Go ahead, Bray. I have Celia, and I also have you afterwards. Go ahead. And George.
Thank you. President, the previous years, leaders from all over the world, they used to talk during the General Assembly about the reforms of the United Nations, General Assembly and Security Council. But these years, we didn't hear that much from them about the reform of the United Nations. Do you think they gave up on that topic, or just they had other priorities? Thank you.
I had over 70 meetings with different heads of delegations at different levels. They definitely has not forgotten about United Nations reform and revitalization of the General Assembly. But I think during the general debate, much more, the issue of COVID-19 and climate change dominated so much. Maybe that is what happened, but I can assure you, revitalization of the General Assembly and the reform of the Security Council well alive within the conversations that I have had.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move to George, and afterwards Celia, and I have you, Stefano. Go ahead, please. Yes, yes.
Thank you, Monica. I think it's the mistake of my glasses and a mask. I'm Martin. Okay.
Martin, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We all are these days,
Okay.
aren't we?
Sorry.
Good job,
Yeah.
Martin. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Monica. Thank you, Ms. President. I have a question for you. Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed the global...
Can you use a mic?
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, Mr. President. Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed the Global Development Initiative in his general debate statement. What's your comment on that? Thank you.
The statement by President Xi Jinping was greatly welcome by and large by all delegations. In fact, the statement that highlighted that China will not be funding any more coal-based power plants around the world is a very, very welcome development. And I think the message is very clear that there is hope, that everyone around the world wanted to send a message of hope that this can be done, that we are together able to do it.
Thank you, Martin. We move to Celia, and we have Stefano afterwards, and Evelyn, of course. Celia, please.
Mr. President, during the high-level week, did you have a chance to meet with France and Mali to try to diffuse the tension between the two countries? And I should add Russia.
I met the foreign minister of Russia, Mr. Lavrov. He came to see me, and also the Mali delegation. But I did not meet the French.
Why not?
No, there was no request. No request. I accommodated all the requests that were made to meet me, and that is how over 70 delegations. If they would have, I would requested. I would have loved to.
Thank you, Mr. President. We go to Stefano and then Evelyn. Stefano, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York. It's a follow-up of something that's been already discussed by you now about the perception of the United Nations out there. But you know, if you if you, to young people, especially young people, if you, how would you respond to that conviction that the United Nations, only the Security Council counts, and the GA is only a forum for talks, not binding resolutions, and even when this resolution of binding passed, they lost their moral weight?
The world today has 1.8 billion youth. And this is the largest number of youth population that humanity has ever seen. And it would be fair to say that with the 1.8 billion people, young people, multilateralism and the United Nations are as far as it could be from their confidence. This is very clearly seen in the manner in which young people are reacting to, for example, climate change issues, how the international community is dealing with climate change issues. I had the privilege of meeting the Secretary General's youth advisors on climate change. They are in different parts of the world. I must say that it was so refreshing to hear them, because the message that they send us through to me is that we could do more, that the United Nations and world leaders can actually do more, and they don't see us doing it. Now, with the 1.8 billion youth around the world, we have to listen to them. We are setting out the future for them. If they can't trust multilateralism, if we fail in gaining their confidence in multilateralism, we will not have countries, a forum where countries would be talking to each other. Because you and I would be gone. They are going to be the leaders. They are going to be deciding whether we will talk to each other or we will go on our own. And that is a very, very sad situation.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, just a quick follow-up. But how would you, with your presidency, how would you show that the General Assembly actually can show that, can show to the world, especially young people, to Greta Thunberg, they just say that there is a lot of talk about the leaders but no action, that actually a forum like the General Assembly can lead? There is a formula for that?
There's no magic formula, but I'm trying. Number one, by bringing in a sense of optimism that we can do it, that together we can do it. And I'm hoping that I will be able to bring leaders together and show to the young people that the General Assembly is a place where things can be done. Well, one might say that I am very naive, but I would want to be called naive rather than a doomsday prophet. That is what I prefer. Also, I'm instituting a youth fellowship program for young diplomats to come to the UN, work in my office from underrepresented countries, so that they get to know, feel, and work through the system. When they go back in 1 year, they will have had an insight into how the whole multilateral system works, how the General Assembly works. I've been able to get the many countries to support this initiative. I'm hoping that the PGA Youth Fellowship Program fellows could be here as early as early November. My first opportunity to get a feel of the UN General Assembly was when I was much younger. I think I've said it many occasions. I had much more hair in those days. I was only 26 years, and I walked through these corridors. I saw a lot of talk and a lot of things happen. From 1988 to 94, every year for the General Assembly session, I had the privilege of coming as part of the Maldives delegation. And during that period, we were negotiating the Agenda 21 for the Rio Summit, the Human Rights Summit in Vienna in the 1993 summit. My confidence in multilateralism is based on those experiences as a young diplomat. By looking at what is the other alternative, there is no alternative. You can't go on your own when it comes to world affairs. There is no other alternative. You have to do it together. And the virus has taught us that no one is safe until everyone is safe. There are no borders. There are no nationalities, nothing. We have to do it together. And I think that message needs to be conveyed to the youth by the youth. And that could happen only if we get them involved through programs such as the PGA Youth Fellowship Program.
We'll take one more here, and then we're going to go to the screen because I have Iftikhar there waving to us. So we're going to be next after Evelyn. Evelyn, go ahead, please.
Thank you.
Monica, do you mind if I just quickly flag something? There's a list of people on the screen who want to ask questions. Myself, Majid, Errol, and also Iftikhar. Just flag that, because I think maybe you can't see the list.
Absolutely, James. We're going to get to you. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Evelyn, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome as president of the GA. I'm Evelyn Leopold, Independent Media Institute and chair of the Dag Hammarskjöld Fund for Journalists. And I'm glad to see you in this seat again, Monica Greeley. And I have two questions. One is on resolutions. Is there any attempt to cut down resolutions that overlap? For example, on the Middle East, there are so many of them that many issues that are very important get swallowed. And secondly, on vaccines, is a vaccine, or do you look to what the World Health Organization has validated or some other group, or is just anyone who says I have a vaccine considered? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evelyn. On the resolutions, the GA Revitalization Committee last session submitted the report, and it highlighted the effect of repetition and the large number of resolutions that are dealing with the same issues. The overwhelmed agenda has to be attended to. And for that to be attended, I believe that the report highlighted that some of the agenda items could be dealt biannually or every 3 years, so that committees will get more time to attend to the resolutions on the agenda in much more detail. The committee on the revitalization of the General Assembly had a substantial report submitted last year, and membership was very happy. I feel that this has to be a continuous effort. It has to be ongoing, and I will make sure that membership go along with these recommendations of the Revitalization Committee. On the vaccine, Evelyn, that's a very, very technical question you have asked me. I got Covishield from India. I've got the 2 doses. I don't know how many countries would say that Covishield is acceptable or not, but a large portion of the countries have got Covishield, and I've survived. But let someone else, a medical person, make that call, not me.
Thank you, Mr. President. You go to the screen now. I have Iftikhar and James afterwards. Iftikhar, please go ahead.
Thank you, Monica. Mr. President, wishing you continued success. I have a question on the Security Council reform, which has been deadlocked for decades. Now it is on your plate, sir. When are you going to name the facilitators to resume the process, the intergovernmental negotiation process? And sir, would you be doing something different to come to a breakthrough point?
Thank you, Iftikhar. This is a question that has been once again asked many, many times, and I can understand why it has been asked so many times, because the Security Council reform is an issue that has been on the, as you said, on the agenda or the plate of the General Assembly for far too long. In 1979, Iftikhar, Maldives was one of the countries who initially signed on to a group of 10 countries who initiated the Security Council reform. And I was only 17 years then. And look at what has happened to me since. And the issue is still there. The issue is still there. I wish I had the magic wand, as I said after taking office. I wish I had the magic wand to fix it. But then at the United Nations, the Security Council reform is a membership-driven issue. What the president does is, as you rightly said, appoint facilitators. And I intend to appoint them before the Security Council reform agenda debate. I think it is scheduled for November, and I will be appointing them before the debate so that work could begin early.
James, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Monica. Really appreciate it. And thank you for speaking with us, Mr. President. It's James Rydell here with The National. You told us at the outset that you're going to be jumping on an aeroplane tonight and you've got a few flights around the world. First, quick little question about that. Given all your talk on climate change, are your flights going to be carbon neutral? Do they involve carbon offsetting? And also, when you get to the UAE Dubai Expo, we understand that climate change is going to be the big issue that you're going to be talking about. Could you just give us a flavour for what your key messages are going to be for over there? We understand you're talking on 4 panels at Expo. And given that you're so passionate about climate change and you're going to be speaking to the part of the world that produces the lion's share of its oil, is there anything you're going to say about hydrocarbon consumption and solar energy? How are you targeting your message to that particular region?
Thank you, James. Yes, I jumped onto the flight this evening and head to Dubai. At the Dubai Expo, I'm addressing climate change. The 4 events that I take part is with regard to climate change. Having a Maldives president as the president of the General Assembly, during the interactive dialogue with the membership, I highlighted the fact that not even for a moment I will forget the plight of small states and others who are on the front line of climate change. So I will do everything possible to keep on talking about how challenging we are, that this entire issue is an existential threat to us. I will make sure that my interactions in Dubai with the UAE leadership as well as at the Expo continues to highlight these facts.
You're going to have to tell me who is on the screen because, of course...
Sorry, are they carbon neutral?
I'm taking Emirates from here to Dubai, Dubai to Mali. I'm taking Qatar Airways from Mali to Doha and to Belgrade. Let me ask the airline and come back to you. I should not comment on it without asking them. But James, I will come back to you on it.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move on now to the next colleague on the screen. Please go ahead. So do we have there? Yes, please go ahead. We can't see you, but we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is Majid Duli. Thank you, Monica. This is Majid Duli from Rudao Media Network. Thank you, Mr. President. I have two questions. The first one is about vaccine. You talked about the positive message by the leaders, but do you think, other than the positive message, there should be a clear mandate for the advanced and rich countries with clear timeline and dosage that the advanced country could give it to the poor countries, given, as you mentioned, that the vaccine inequity is really, really bad at this stage? And my second question is about the women's right. You spoke about commitment and how it is central to your agenda. Secretary General talk about it in the same way. But as we are also talking about Taliban possibility becoming representing Afghanistan and becoming member at the General Assembly, Taliban regime, as you know, they have zero respect for women's rights. There are egregious violations against women. They don't even believe a woman should be in that briefing room right now. So how do you reconcile and feel about Taliban becoming a member and at your assembly, possibly in future? How do you reconcile that with this talk about women being the center of your agenda and United Nations agenda? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Majid. On the vaccines, what I'm hoping to do by convening the January meeting is exactly what you are asking for. We have so far seen that the vaccine rollout in the world today is a rollout that we have never seen in the world. That is the magnitude of it. But the fact remains that it is not enough. We need more, and that is what I'm trying to do. I'm hoping that we will be able to get all the countries come together in January and come out with a more committed and more optimistic timetable for the vaccination programs. On women's right, Majid, it's an issue that I will, again, not stop talking, because I feel that we cannot have women's rights brushed under the carpet. During this lockdown of the entire world, in all the countries, and we should not be thinking that it didn't happen in my country. In all the countries, the people who suffered most are vulnerable groups, and of them, women, young girls, domestic violence, and so on. So we should all be talking about, we should never condone any rights of women that have been violated anywhere in the world. At the United Nations, when it comes to who is to be admitted as a member or credentials of a country is to be recognized, we have in our rules of procedure that it will be decided by the membership. The 193 countries, they decide. It's not the president. So we will still continue to highlight the fact that women around the world do not have their rightful place. They face the challenges. very clear fact that I gave today. Out of the 194 speakers here at the General Assembly, 18 were women. Unacceptable.
Okay, Gloria, do you want to ask a question? I see you there. And is there any other taker on online? No, on the screen. I don't see anyone. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I have Edie and then Karina. Edie, go ahead, and Karina, that's going to be the last question. Go ahead, Karina.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. Yesterday, the Ethiopian government announced that 7 top UN officials, many of them dealing with Tigray and trying to get humanitarian access to millions of people in need, were being declared persona non grata and asked to leave the country in 72 hours. I wonder what your reaction is to this and what you think the General Assembly should do about it.
Thank you, Edith. I'm deeply concerned about the situation in Ethiopia. I regret to hear the announcement by the government of Ethiopia to expel the UN officials, and especially during this very difficult time. The United Nations humanitarian operations in Ethiopia are there to coordinate the delivery of aid, food, medicine, water to the population which badly needs it. Ethiopia has a reputation for stability and economic development and for promoting peace and security within its, not only within its region, but also in Africa. And therefore, I echo the call made by many, many others and count on the wisdom of the Ethiopian government working in concert with concerned parties to resolve amicably the differences and bring this situation under control as soon as possible.
Karina, I think you have the last question. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My name is Karina Masimova. I'm with Sputnik News. And I have a question on Afghanistan. Have you had contacts with the de facto government in Afghanistan? And has there been any communication between you and the authorities during the ANGA besides the letter that they sent to you about the representative? And if you have not had the contacts, when do you plan on establishing them? And possibly discussing the changing in the country's representation at the United Nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. The only communication we have received so far from the administration in Kabul is the communication with regard to the credentials. No other communication has been received. And with regard to the credentials, the communication, it will be dealt, as I have said earlier, by the Credentials Committee. A final decision will be made by the General Assembly, and that will be communicated to the administration, whichever way the General Assembly decides.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, everybody, for coming here today. Sir, you have the last question. Well, not question, but remarks.
I have a question for Monica. Thank you very much for this opportunity to interact with you. And I intend to meet with you as soon as I return from my travels. During my travels, I intend to continue to highlight the 5 rays of hope which I have come into office promising, that of vaccine equity, that of equitable development, the SDGs and the 2030 agenda, the needs for the climate, the needs of the planet, rights of all, respecting the rights of all, and the revitalization of the United Nations. And specifically, I would be concentrating on also on gender and youth. I will be meeting young people during all my travels, not only this time, but future travels as well, to make sure that I not only highlight, but engage more people, even at the leadership level, so that we will be able to maybe take off a little bit out of the 135.6 years that the current trajectory presumes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.